Hello and welcome to our special football edition of The Ring. I'm Stefan Grobe. At Euronews, we usually don't cover sports events, but last night's semi-final between Paris Saint-Germain and Bayern Munich was a game for the ages. Reason enough to bring you this live debrief from Brussels. After a fantastic match that electrified the Parc des Princes and will go down in Champions League history, PSG secured a one-goal lead, having been up 5-2, but having also feared the worst. The second leg next week in Munich promises a huge one. To talk about what happened last night, what comes next, and what else is moving European football these days, I'm joined by two big football fans and consummate Brussels insiders. Connor Allen, who manages government and external relations at a big company, and Petros Fasoulas, Secretary General of the European Movement International. Welcome to both of you, and thanks for coming on the show tonight. Connor, I start with you. Did the better team win last night?
Well, it was such an entertaining game. Who was the better team? Okay, you could say it's PSG, but I actually thought both of the defences were kind of crap. If I can say so. Manuel Neuer didn't have the best game. So probably, if you ask me, I don't really know who was the best team. I was so glued, it was so entertaining, but it was marked by individual errors.
That's what it should be, right?
We were
who
lucky.
Are you rooting for, Pet?
Well, neither of the teams are the one I support. I'm an Olympiacos fan through and through. If I support anybody else, the world will end. But we were lucky to be treated to top-quality football by two really strong teams, representing two leagues that are indeed at the top of their performance, and as a result, choosing the best one isn't even necessary. You know, I think we enjoyed the game. We saw attacking football, as we haven't seen this season a lot. You know, things are becoming a bit more boring, and that in itself, I think, was a triumph.
Yeah, on that point, 9 goals in a Champions League semi-final, that's a record. What does that tell us about the team's qualities?
Well, I think it illustrates the difference between PSG and Bayern. And so where PSG, they have such individual quality that when you kind of open the game up and you have that free-flowing attacking dynamic, the individual quality shines through a bit more. But then once the game calms down a bit, you know, Bayern are so strong with the structure they have, the kind of German discipline and order, that they really got back into it.
Yeah. I think it also reminds us the extent to which football has become this perfect machine now. You know, we have so much data, so much analysis on performance. Athletes get the best treatment to recover from injuries. They have trainers. They are able to reach a peak very early in their career and then spend years and years perfecting their talent. So ultimately, when they reach that level, they can perform in an outside fashion.
And the quality of both teams was rather on the same level, right? So PSG coach Luis Enrique said that it was the best game he ever experienced as a coach. And later he said that PSG merited to win, but also merited to end with a draw and merited to lose. Was he right, Connor?
Yeah, I mean...
So was it just good luck?
It wasn't... Maybe it was luck, because could you... And we just talked about this. Was there anything between the teams? I don't think there was. It was individual mistakes. Manuel Neuer, again, perhaps maybe should have saved 2 goals, beaten in his near post one time. So I think it was really, when you talk about the quality of the players and the 1% that decides these games, I think it was this 1%. I don't think any team deserved to win, but that's the result we have.
How important is this one-goal advantage for PSG heading into the second leg?
I mean, it can be very important and it can mean nothing. We saw how quickly goals were scored last night. So you can imagine one team going 3-0 up after 15 minutes in a week's time. So, but at the same time, one goal gives you that psychological advantage. It makes you realize that, you know, you can beat the other team. It's possible that Bayern feels a bit more confident because, first of all, they came from behind and they nearly equalized. They really put PSG up against it. And second of all, of course, they're playing at home. So that one-goal advantage can disappear quite quickly. 75,000, the Allianz Arena is tight.
Cauldron. Yeah. A cauldron.
Anybody can crack.
In Munich. And Bayern only lost 3 games this season. And they're hosting PSG at home. Does that make the final difference?
It makes all the difference, doesn't it? And we've all been there in the football stadium. You've got the fans going, something's on the line. You could cut the atmosphere of a night. It makes all the difference. And when we're talking about those 1%, and you've got your fans behind you screaming and shouting and going for the PSG, I think Bayern have a strong psychological
Will
advantage.
PSG be outscreamed in Munich? Certainly. There was one scene yesterday where one of the ball boys refused to give the ball to Manuel Neuer. Did you see that? And obviously Bayern was under pressure to score. That is something we don't want to see, right? At least from somebody who has nothing to do with the game.
Yeah, well, where I come from, this is quite regular. Everybody's trying to give their team a tiny bit of advantage. And yes, holding on to the ball, if that makes a difference, why not?
Yeah. We've always had it, though, haven't we? I remember Chelsea about 10 years ago. Was it David Luiz kicking a ball boy because he wouldn't give the ball back? It's always happened. You're always going to have teams scrambling for a little bit of advantage.
To make it more suspenseful next week, Hakimi, PSG player, was injured in the 88th minute or something and then could barely make it to the end. He's probably not going to play next week. Is that a handicap for the Parisians?
Yeah, I mean, so I think he's going to go in testing at the moment and maybe he's back, but most likely not. Listen, I think the modern game relies so much on that role of the wing-back, right? And really attacking defenders, getting up and down the field. And Hakimi's one of the best in the game at that. So it's not the end of the world for PSG, but they will miss him for sure.
Yeah, they have such an amazing squad, so much talent. I think they can replace anyone.
Yeah, they have a...
It's a pity that he won't be there because he's an exciting player indeed.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. What characterizes both teams' qualities? Is it, we said they were, forward playing and no tactics. It's playing offense really. But can we detect some differences here?
Well, it's interesting that you asked that because I think Bayern is a bit more muscular. They're a bit more dominant in the way they approach the game. PSG is famous for their fluid and fast game. They play a lot from the wings. They have this mentality of running the ball. But I think that is also where the difference could be in the second leg. Who will be able to assert themselves physically over the other, win over the mind games as well, and eventually get that extra edge because the competition is really strong and the two teams are hard to separate.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you can really see with Bayern just the mentality and the grit they have to go 5-2 down at one point and to fight back, to still be in it for the next leg. That shows true spirit. I think it shows tenacity and grit and resilience, which maybe fancy flowing PSG maybe they won't have. I think maybe in the next leg, when we start to see Bayern coming for PSG, it's going to be a real test of PSG's mentality.
But I mean, still they lost, right? But did they merit a draw at that point?
I don't know. I think PSG on the night, I mean, they probably perhaps deserved it. I mean, they opened the game up. The game was played to PSG's strengths and not the other way around. And so I think there's something to be said for grabbing the game by the scruff of the neck and really going for it. But it just was really close, wasn't it?
Yeah. One word on the referee. There were two penalty kicks, obviously contested. How important, I'm not going to, into this debate whether it was justified or not, but how important is, the performance of the referee in a game like this?
It can make a difference, of course. It can ruin a game. But then again, it's part of life. Mistakes are part of life. And I think in modern football, because so much is at stake, so much money, so much prestige, we're trying to scrutinize every decision and avoid every mistake. That's not how life works. Sometimes people make mistakes. It's part of the game, the way it's part of life.
Yeah. And I guess as professionals, you have to shove it, right?
Yeah. I mean, bad refereing decisions have always been with the game, and even with VAR, they still exist. I thought those penalty decisions were a bit weak, maybe. I don't know if you agree with me or not, but it's part of the game. You've got to live with it, and at the end of the day, it balances out. Yeah.
Is either team now favored to win the Champions League this year, regardless of what happens between Atletico and Arsenal, Petros?
I would say that this would have been an amazing final. That these two teams deserve to go all the way they have performed. Don't forget, I think they both have scored over 40 goals in this competition, and their performances have been high consistently. So it would be a pity if one of them is not there, because the way they play merits to reach the final at least.
Yeah.
Now, who is going to make it is really hard to predict, and I'm not a betting man.
Connor?
I don't think either. I think Arsenal are going to win it.
Arsenal's going to win it.
Like Arsenal look electric. I think they're unbeaten. right?
Yeah.
So,
And this comes from a Man United fan.
I know,
Right,
exactly.
right,
This is quite a statement.
On live TV.
I don't think you're going to be allowed back to Manchester again.
All right, so we have Bayern from Germany, PSG from France, Atletico from Spain, and Arsenal from England. That is pretty balanced. There used to be a time when we had, 3 Spanish teams, 3 English teams among the last 4. Is the rest of Europe catching up? Is there more balance now? Is it even-handed?
Look, there's still a few leagues that are dominating European competitions, whether we like it or not, because of television rights, foreign investment from very wealthy individuals, whether it's from the Gulf or the US or elsewhere.
Yeah.
So, we still see that a handful of leagues and a small number of teams dominate year in, year out. It's great that 4 nations are represented, the teams from 4 nations are represented on the semifinals.
Yeah.
Certainly an improvement. It does get a bit boring when you have 3 Spanish teams or 3 English teams
Right, that makes it more interesting, right, Connor?
Yeah, it does. And I think it's reflective of, in general, football is much more competitive across the game now. And if you look in the English league, within the Spanish league, within the German league, there's suddenly 6 or 7 teams pushing for those Champions League spots. That raises everyone's game, apart from the French league, where there's still only 1
All right,
team.
let me stop you right there as we're just getting warmed up. Now it's time for you to challenge each other directly and ask each other questions. So let's get started. Petros, why don't you kick us off?
Well, I just remember a famous English striker, Gary Lineker, saying that football is a game played by 2 teams, 11 players each, and the Germans always win. Is that true?
A long time ago.
It was once upon a time, but I mean, that sort of German dominance. I mean, is it really still there? I remember a time, my defining moment as a fan was 1999. Manchester United scoring 2 goals in the last minute to beat Bayern Munich. I have to say that because Stefan's almost a Bayern fan. German dominance, it's more. They're certainly scary, but it's a myth, isn't it? Isn't it a myth?
They do play quite.
Does this have something to do with governance of football in Germany? That's different?
Because
Because there's
the ownership
no
models.
big investor can buy a club, something like this?
A little bit. And I think, and this is a question I want to ask to you, when we look at teams these days, you have a difference. You have teams with real soul and real passion, and they're connected to communities. So as a Man United fan, I'm a bad United fan, but I'm going to say Liverpool. If you go towards the Kop, you stand in the Kop, it's such an electric atmosphere. Those fans love that club. If you go to Red Bull Leipzig, if you go to Chelsea, if you go to Manchester City, you go to PSG, it's not the same, is it?
Yeah, it's very true. I think globalization, the internationalization of the game has made it obviously very exciting. As we were discussing earlier, performances are better, players are so much skillful, so skillful. But it's true, we've lost a little bit the connection with the community. And I think that is a big risk for not just professional football. I think the same applies to all sports, especially those with a global profile. If we lose the fans, if we turn it too much into entertainment, too much into business, then the sport itself is going to suffer, and ultimately the people who invested in it are going to lose their money. So it is great that we have so many great teams and so many good players, so much interest to watch the game, but if the fans, the local fans, don't feel a connection with the club, the whole thing can fall apart quite quickly.
Yeah. Petros, another question to Connor.
Well, I struggle a little bit with this because I don't want the conversation to be very nerdy, but I'll ask you this. What would you prefer? Front row seats, World Cup final, or 90 minutes with von der Leyen?
It depends if it's on the ring or not.
Question.
No, I mean the World Cup final. Obviously, it's such a special thing to go to a World Cup final. I've never been to a World Cup final. I don't know if any of you lads have, but defining moments in your life,
Yeah.
and people point to those World Cup moments, right?
I have a question to you, Connor. Britain has 4 federations, 4 teams. Is that not dividing the power of British football? I mean, the last competition you won was in 1966, the year I was born. I remember that, against Germany.
But I mean, so what's your suggestion? That Great Britain should compete?
Yeah, sure.
As we do in the Olympics? No, because I think if you ask a Scottish fan, who do you truly support? A Scottish fan will say Scotland. They'll never root for England. And the same with the Northern Irish and the same with the Welsh. And that goes back to what we were saying. It needs to be connected to local communities, and it has to be connected to, it needs to be natural, right? And so if you compare it to golf, where we have a European
Well,
team,
that
it's bad. No one
brings
feels
about
attention to that.
collective disappointment every 4 years because you guys never win anything because the power of British football is so divided.
Well, you look at the next World Cup; it's coming home.
Okay, all right. I've heard that sentence before. Connor, next question to Petros.
Well, we kind of lapsed there into the national sport. Maybe my question is, how is the health, in your eyes, of the national game? You know, is there still a huge amount of people who really get behind their nation and cheer, or is it slipping away as these clubs and this club football becomes so much more powerful?
No, I think there is a lot of passion still in support of the national team in most European nations, at least the ones that I know for. And you know, we are now in Belgium. And as we all know, Belgium is a very divided country along linguistic lines, religious lines, political lines. But the one thing that unites them is the national football team. And we've seen this year in, year out, tournament in, tournament out. Even when they're not doing well, people are really coming behind them. So I think there is still passion in supporting the national team. And it's also important to make sure that these big clubs that want to create their closed leagues and make sure that the players don't get injured playing for the national team, don't touch national federations, they don't touch the national team.
I like that unifying theme. We'll come back to it in a minute. We now want to hear the view from a new person, a new voice, and here it is. To bring in EU Sports Commissioner Glenn Mikalev now from Malta. He watched the game last night and told us the following. The semi-final showed football at its very best. That's what European sport does. It brings people into the same moment. Footballers are ambassadors and role models people look up to. They inspire and connect millions of people. And the Champions League, together with Europe's domestic leagues, gives them the greatest stage to do exactly that. Do you agree, Connor?
I absolutely agree. And, you know, you look at footballers have always inspired young men and women. I remember, my role model as a child, it was Eric Cantona, right? Of course, as a kid, you want to look up to these role models, these people who are the best in the world, elite athletes who put in so much training and sacrifice, and you really see the results of that on the pitch. I absolutely agree with Commissioner Mikalev.
So that unifying element here, does it exist? And can it help us as society to overcome, you know, other divisions?
Yes, absolutely. One step back, sometimes we put too much on the shoulders of these young men and women, you know, these athletes generally. We're talking about men's football in particular here. You know, they're in their early 20s, some of them in the late teens. And, you know, they perform at the highest level in front of thousands, if not millions of people watching on TV. And then if we expect them also to function as role models too, especially ones that are supposed to unify society, that is a lot of pressure there. Having said that, you know, there are examples where people have really grasp that opportunity, that the spotlight, and they used it to speak about issues that are separate to football. And I embrace this because I think football is part of society and they need to have a voice in that society. But sometimes I think we put too much pressure on them. And then all the PR comes around and they end up sounding like robots because they're too careful to say the wrong thing.
Can I challenge you on that? Why should footballers, who, okay, yes, I accept they are role models, but they're multi-millionaires. They are so detached from the issues of the common person. Why should these footballers be speaking about anything other than sport? You
know, not everyone is detached. It's true, there are some who have become too rich and obviously they're completely from a different world. But, you know, not everyone is detached. And I mean that also about those that are not role models. You know, the guy who we saw an English football player recently getting really intoxicated in a bar in his local town and falling asleep. You know,
but
how much money he makes, he's like a normal lad.
I think he has a point. How can multi-millionaire football players be role models for kids who grow up in suburbia under very, very modest circumstances?
It can be an inspiration, especially for those who are coming from disadvantaged backgrounds, to see someone who is coming from their own context and becoming really successful, wealthy even, doing something that they care for. I think that can be the difference between pursuing, playing a sport, being physical, being healthy, and doing drugs or falling into crime.
All right, we talk about the dark side of footballs now. Let's go to the next round. So, UEFA reports show that hundreds to thousands of posts are flagged during tournaments. Between 5 to 65% of flag content is classified as racist, depending on the competition and stage. Racism is consistently listed as a major category of discrimination in European football monitoring systems, according to UEFA. Connor, do these numbers surprise you?
The numbers don't surprise me, no, and anyone with a Twitter account will know when a match day is on, you will see some awful stuff. But you also have to realise you can't police the world, right? And a lot of these comments originate from places outside European jurisdiction. I don't think, and we all grew up in the 90s and for you guys the 80s, sorry to say, where racism was really rife in football. It's really nasty and it was really visible and present. That's not the game today. Today, a black person could take their family to a game in full safety and full security, more or less.
We're still hearing, bad comments about black players in stadiums as soon as the player approaches the sideline or gets the ball from the ball boy. We've seen awful scenes here, right?
Yeah, football is
even in national leagues.
Football is a reflection of our society. It doesn't operate in a vacuum. It's not just a script that we put together to present an idealized version of our everyday reality. Unfortunately, our society is divided. There is racism, bigotry, and as a result, that spills over into football as well, the same way it spills over in every side of society. Yeah. We need to fight this kind of division, especially racism, across our society. And when we manage to educate our people, then they will be able to behave better as human beings and as fans as well.
When we manage, who should do this?
Well, I mean, if I can push back on this, sure. Yes. So when you hear those words in the stadium, those people get lifted. They get stadium bans, right? I don't think Europe itself has a massive problem with racism in football. There are clear punishments, and we see those punishments being enacted all the time. Your citation for why is there so much racism in football was online comments on Twitter. We don't know the origin of those comments. They could be from anywhere in the world. And so, I don't think we should give Europe the power to police the world in that. Unfortunately, we just have to accept it.
Well, there's coming back to last night's game, there is this story that probably only football can write. And this is the friendship between Dembélé from PSG and Upamecano from Bayern Munich, who have been friends since kindergarten. And now they're playing on both sides, in good football jobs. Is this an inspiring story? Should we tell these stories more often?
It's inspiring and it's not. And I think, the game should be about competition, fierce competition, and the best athletes in the world going at each other and doing everything they can to win. And, I always remember what Roy Keane saying of the Pogba brothers. Are they really going at each other hard as they can when they go for half-time and they're embracing and holding hands and stuff? No. You need to be out there to win.
All right, so it's not 11 friends playing against other 11 friends.
You know what they say, football is not a matter of life or death. It's much more important than that. Of course, when people go into the pitch, they only see an opponent and they want to win. They want to dominate that opponent and win the game, win the championship, win the cup. But I think I see some beauty in this, where two friends can compete and at the same time leave the pitch, exchange their shirts, and go and have a drink together because they go back a long time. So yeah, it doesn't compromise, I think, at all their sense of competitiveness. To reach that level, you should be able to play through anything, including friendship.
Be friends off the pitch, but on the pitch, be enemies.
That's a perfect conclusion, but we're not yet there at the end. Now it's time to move on to our fifth and final round, where we want to do something different. I'm going to ask you a set of questions, and you can only answer with one word. Okay? Petro, start with you. Who will win the Champions League this year?
I think it's going to be PSG.
Arsenal.
All right. Who should we consider the best player of the Champions League this year? Kane?
I agree.
He's a little biased. Oh, okay.
I will give him that. I've never been a big fan of his, but the way he's played for Bayern has exceeded my expectations, so I'll give him an extra point for that.
Okay. Who should we consider the best coach?
I really like Enrique. I think he's a great guy. I love his style. Even though Kompany is an exciting young man, from Belgium, of course, played in the...
Okay.
I think Enrique is the best guy.
Okay. Now I'm going to ask a question where you can only answer with yes or no to make it short. Connor, should the Champions League be on free TV?
No.
Yes.
Okay. Let's move on to the World Cup. Who wins the World Cup this year?
Oh my goodness, that's very, very difficult. You know what? Greece is not there, so I'll have to choose somebody else. Let's see, this is controversial.
You could say England if you want.
Okay. Yes, you know what? I'll say England. I'll say England.
You think about it, Connor.
England, of course.
Okay.
It's coming home.
Should we have a Europa League, a real Europa League with only the best clubs? A project that has been, floated in the past.
Like a closed league?
Yes.
No.
Like in the US? No?
No.
No. All right. Letting 3 countries host the World Cup, is that a good idea? No.
Yes.
Okay.
Inventing
the FIFA Peace Prize and awarding it to Donald Trump, is that a good idea?
Terrible. Not a good idea.
It's a nuanced answer. No from the perspective of credibility. Yes from the perspective of getting Trump on board.
Okay.
I'm getting the game.
In this World Cup, there will be a record number of 48 participating teams. Too many?
Yes.
No.
Okay. Iran qualified for the World Cup. Should the country participate or be kicked out as the Trump administration suggested?
Participate.
Participate.
Okay. And are tickets generally too expensive?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Outrageous, yes.
Would you guys, earn some money, consider going to the US and buy a ticket?
If you're inviting, sure, but I don't think I can afford it.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I can't afford that. Not on my salary.
Listen, that's it. That was the final answer. That brings us to the end of this special live edition of The Ring. Thanks again to Connor Allen and Petros Fasoulas for a lively conversation here from our studio in Brussels. Thanks to our audience at home. If you like, you can continue the conversation by sending us your comments to thering@euronews.com. We'd love to have your feedback. That's it for today. I'm Stefan Grobe. Take care and see you soon on Euronews.